Just a few miles from Manhattan's glittering skyline lies a place most New Yorkers would rather forget. A place of violence, corruption, and despair. Rikers Island isn't just a jail, it's a city of cages, housing thousands in chaos every single day. From brutal beatings to political scandals, Rikers has become a symbol of everything broken in America's justice system. This is the story of Rikers Island, the most notorious jail in the United States. To understand Rikers Island, you must first understand where it sits, not just geographically, but symbolically. The island is located in the East River, between Queens and the Bronx, just a short distance from LaGuardia Airport. From the sky, planes take off and land over a piece of land that has become synonymous with misery. For millions of New Yorkers, Rikers is out of sight and out of mind. But for the tens of thousands of people who pass through its gates every year, it is unforgettable. The story of Rikers begins in the 19th century. Originally, it wasn't even a prison. In 1884, the city of New York purchased the island from the Riker family, descendants of Abraham Riken, a Dutch settler who had owned the land since the 1600s. The island was used for landfill, a dumping ground for the city's garbage, and eventually for correctional purposes. Before Rikers, inmates were mostly held in places like the infamous Blackwell's Island Penitentiary, now Roosevelt Island. But as New York grew, so did the need for a larger jail complex. By 1932, the first jail at Rikers Island officially opened. What followed was the creation of an entire jail city. Over the decades, more and more facilities were built until the island became a sprawling complex of 10 different jails, designed to hold up to 15,000 inmates at its peak. Unlike federal supermax prisons such as ADX Florence or California's Pelican Bay, Rikers was never about long-term incarceration. It was, and still is, a jail, meaning it holds mostly people awaiting trial or serving short sentences. This distinction is critical. On any given day, the majority of people at Rikers haven't been convicted of a crime. They are pre-trial detainees, many held simply because they couldn't afford bail. Yet conditions at Rikers have been described as worse than some of America's toughest prisons. Overcrowding, violence, and neglect have defined its history. From the very beginning, Rikers was plagued by scandal. In the 1970s and 1980s, New York's crime wave sent thousands into the jail system, pushing Rikers to its breaking point. Cells were overcrowded, sometimes with 3 or 4 men crammed into a space meant for one. Fights were constant. Guards were accused of corruption and brutality. Inmates died, sometimes under suspicious circumstances, sometimes from medical neglect. But the problems at Rikers weren't just about the inmates. The jail complex became notorious for corruption among staff. Smuggling, extortion, and even organized gang activity infiltrated the ranks of correction officers. Investigations revealed officers sometimes turned a blind eye to violence, or even encouraged fights as a way of maintaining control. The line between guard and gangster blurred, and yet despite scandal after scandal, Rikers survived. Politicians promised reform, lawsuits were filed, and human rights organizations sounded alarms. But the machine kept running. Thousands came and went every year, caught in the cycle of arrests, short sentences, and repeat offenses. One of the reasons Rikers is so infamous is its visibility in the media. Countless documentaries, news reports, and testimonies have painted a picture of a place where chaos is the norm. Inmates have described Rikers as hell on earth. Correction officers have admitted it's one of the most roused places to work in America. Families of detainees have marched and protested, demanding closure of the facility. In recent years, the push to close Rikers has grown stronger. City officials have announced plans to shut it down by 2027, replacing it with smaller borough-based jails. But whether that will ever truly happen remains uncertain. For now, Rikers stands as both a relic of New York's past and a symbol of its ongoing struggles with crime, poverty, and justice. The birth of Rikers Island was meant to be a solution, a modern correctional facility to replace the crumbling, outdated jails of the early 20th century. Instead, it became one of the most notorious jails in the world. As we move forward, we'll dive deeper into what life is really like inside those walls. The gangs, the violence, the scandals, and the human cost of America's most infamous jail. Life on the island. Violence, chaos, and survival. Life inside Rikers Island is not like life inside most jails. For decades, the island has been a pressure cooker of overcrowding, gang rivalries, poor staffing, and neglect. To many who have passed through, survival wasn't about serving your time. It was about making it through each day alive. The jail houses everyone from teenagers to hardened adults. In fact, until very recently, minors as young as 16 were held at Rikers alongside adults, a practice widely criticized for exposing vulnerable youth to extreme violence. Many of these young men and women were locked up, not because they had been convicted of crimes, but because they couldn't pay bail. This mixture of untried detainees, gang members, and desperate youth created a volatile, unpredictable environment. The violence at Rikers has been staggering. Stabbings, slashings, and gang beatings are common. Reports from the Department of Correction have documented hundreds of violent incidents every year. Inmates often create improvised weapons called shanks from sharpened metal, plastic, or even toothbrushes. Gangs use these to settle scores, intimidate rivals, or simply prove dominance. For correction officers, breaking up fights often means risking their own lives. But it's not just inmate-on-inmate violence. There have been countless reports of guard brutality. Some officers have been accused of beating detainees as punishment, or of looking the other way while inmates fight it out. Investigations revealed something chilling. At times, officers allegedly ran Rikers like a gladiator arena, encouraging fights as a way to control the population. The culture of violence became so ingrained that Rikers earned a nickname among those inside: the program. In this system, inmates learned quickly that you either joined a gang or were left unprotected. The strongest preyed on the weak, and officers often lacked the resources or the will to intervene. Beyond the violence, the conditions themselves made life unbearable. Overcrowding meant cells designed for one person often held 2 or 3. In the summer, the heat was suffocating. In the winter, the cold seeped through every crack. Plumbing failures, broken lights, and infestations of rats and roaches were common complaints. Inmates went days without showers. Medical care was notoriously poor, with many detainees alleging they were denied treatment for serious conditions. One of the most infamous cases that exposed the brutality of Rikers was the tragic story of Kalief Browder. In 2010, at just 16 years old, Kalief was arrested for allegedly stealing a backpack. Unable to pay the $3,000 bail, he was sent to Rikers, where he spent 3 years awaiting trial. 2 of those years were spent in solitary confinement. During that time, Kalief was repeatedly beaten by both inmates and guards. Eventually, the charges against him were dropped, and he was released. But the damage was irreversible. In 2015, at the age of 22, Kalief Browder took his own life. His story drew national attention and became a rallying cry for reform, exposing the human cost of the jail's broken system. Kalief's case wasn't isolated. Investigations have revealed dozens of similar stories. Detainees who died waiting for medical care, who were beaten into comas, or who were driven to suicide after years of neglect and isolation. Each story added to Rikers' reputation as one of the most dangerous places in America. For those who lived it, daily survival was a matter of routine. Inmates learned how to read the room, when to talk, when to stay silent, who to align with, and who to avoid. Some formed protective groups, while others relied on sheer intimidation to carve out space. Correction officers often worked 16-hour shifts, overwhelmed and understaffed, trying to maintain order in an environment that many described as unmanageable. The violence wasn't confined to the inmates. Officers themselves became victims. Assaults on staff were frequent, with guards slashed across the face or beaten in ambushes. The high stress of working on Rikers led to burnout, corruption, and even suicides among correction officers. Many admitted that once you stepped foot inside, you entered a different world, one with its own rules, its own hierarchies, and its own codes of survival. The human toll of Rikers Island cannot be overstated. Every year, thousands pass through its gates. Some stay for days, others for months, or even years awaiting trial. And while some leave physically intact, many leave with deep psychological scars. The violence, the fear, the constant tension, these things don't just disappear when the gates open. They follow former detainees back into their communities, creating cycles of trauma and despair. This is why Rikers has been described as more than just a jail. It is a symbol of systemic failure, a place where poverty, racial inequality, mental illness, and broken justice policies collide. Politicians have promised to close it for decades, but every promise has been met with delays, lawsuits, and pushback from unions and communities. As of today, the official plan is to shut Rikers down by 2027, replacing it with smaller, modern jails across New York City's boroughs. Whether that actually happens remains to be seen. For now, Rikers Island remains standing, an infamous monument to a justice system stretched to its breaking point. Rikers Island is not just a jail, it's a mirror reflecting the violence, neglect, and inequality that run deep through America's justice system. Inside its walls, lives are destroyed long before trials are ever held. Guards are broken, families shattered, and entire communities scarred. For decades, Rikers has been called a temporary fix, a place meant to be replaced. Yet it endures year after year, decade after decade. The real question is, if Rikers closes, will its legacy of violence end with it, or will it simply move to a new address?